we were told that efforts don't matter, results matter. Now remember like how the stress would be, because stress level increases, your emotional brain starts working, so it's super stressful for someone to even take an action.
So when the brain is faced with multiple choices, there was a big study which was done where the people had less choices, more buying happened.
Right.
And people had more choices, less buying happened. A lot of things are happening online where the choices are absolutely endless.
We call it the analysis paralysis for the customers, right? Because am I making the right decision?
Did you guess by now? We are going to talk on Neurosales. Hi, this is Dr. Sweta Adatia. I'm the founder of Limitless Brain Lab. I joke and I say I'm a brain plumber, aka I fix broken brains. But fixing the brains is not so much of an interesting job. Of course, yes, it's my day job. But what is really exciting is to bring aspects of neuroscience into daily life. And what kind of daily life? We have been seeing in the previous multiple episodes over the period of time. Thank you for all those who have been watching us, and welcome to the new members. We have been watching neuroscience from various aspects, from meditation, manifestation, to bringing chanting. But today I am going to bring in a very, very special guest, because this is going to be the start of our very new series on neuroscience for making new heights. And we start with an absolutely brilliant person on this very first podcast in the series. And we are going to talk about something which we shy to talk on, something which is not very exciting for a lot of people, something which people are already stressed about. Did you guess by now? We are going to talk on neurosales. Sales, as I was talking to this wonderful person, I thought is a very stressful job. And she reverted back and says, hey, it's a very noble profession. That led me to thinking, how does it become a noble profession? What are the elements that you need to put forth to make sales exciting? And of course, I'm a neuroscientist, so everything comes into the lens of neuroscience. And there began this conversation that let's take this conversation to the people. So here we are. I'm super excited to bring it on. Leenna here with me, who is going to introduce herself. And this entire episode, we are going to talk on neurosales. Yes, we will bring in our anecdotal explanations. I will bring in a lot of neuroscience. So hang tight and watch us until the end. Some fantastic stuff for you, not just for the people in sales. Technically, we also buy the stuff. So as buyers, as sellers, as business people, as people in our daily lives, this is one concept, this is one thing which I personally feel needs to be properly understood. So let's begin. Hi, Leenna. Welcome to this very first podcast. So why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, Dr. Sweta. It's like, I love the energy you bring always, right? Exciting to be here. Sales, of course, is a great topic to talk about. And it's like an ocean. You can always take an entire year to talk about it. Thank you for bringing me on the show. I'm Leenna Jayachandran. I'm a sales professional, been in sales for almost 30 years, worked in some of the best organizations in the world, Microsoft, IBM, Dell, Plantronics, and multiple other system integration companies. I run sales performance improvement organization. I'm a CEO and a founder for Justify. Been very fortunate to be in this particular subject of sales, because, as I said, sales is a noble profession. Because I'm also on the board of a lot of companies, and I see multiple people, being a little bit aversive about sales. That's not something I want to talk about, right? So sales is a noble profession, because I look at sales as a facilitators of change.
Beautiful.
Think about it. When you're actually having a conversation with a client or with an opposite person, you're helping them make a decision. I mean, what better can it be? Look at the impact it can create. A salesperson or somebody who's selling a medical device, it's actually impacting patient care, well-being of, the well-being of the societal for that matter. So I feel, if I can just give you a small example of my own experience, right? I'm a sales consultant. We work in sales effectiveness. Now, here is what happened once that one of the sales professional was stuck with a particular opportunity for a very long time, and she was struggling with it, and so kind of worked with some of the frameworks, some of the best in approaches, and so forth. We worked together, and she went in to close the deal. Now that's not the exciting part. What happened when she closed the deal? It was one of the largest deals she was working on. She got her incentives, which she overachieved her targets. Now, once she got the incentives, what did she do with that? She actually wanted to buy a house for her parents and gift it for her parents. Now, that led, like, your entire intervention to help someone do something better has actually created a huge impact. And that's what got me to think every time when such successes come in, I always think that, you're not in the profession of selling a product or feature. You're in the profession of really transforming lives, whether it's professional or personal, because it impacts from a professional side to your personal side as well. So I would say, from transaction to transformation is what salespeople do.
Wow, that is beautiful. Transaction to transformation.
Yeah.
And I think you touched upon a few very important points, whether it's a medical technology or it's a medical thing which a person has to choose from a service, or something which is, even for that matter, staying in a house, right?
Yes.
So every single choice can be very, very perturbing and confusing for the customer who is buying.
Absolutely.
So I think I completely love the aspect that you are actually facilitating and actually making them choose better.
Yes.
Then why is it that salespeople are so much stressed? I keep hearing when I meet the patients, my first job is not just to look at their health. I often am quite interested to know the work that they do, the family life, the social. Because somewhere I feel that health is a concordrum. It's a mix of all these things done together well. There are two professions which often come back to me and say, hey, our profession is the most stressful. One of them is teachers, and second is sales. So why do you think that is the case?
So I would look at it in multiple aspects of it. Traditionally, sales has been like, get your numbers, get things done. That's how you're trained, right? So you're constantly looking at, how do I close the deal rather than making a change? The impact and changing and transforming lives, that's not the thought process we had traditionally, right? So there's so much happening in that aspect. So you're carrying those same behaviors, hence you're running a race, right? But another aspect which I've also seen is that there are people who don't prepare much before they go and have a conversation. Really understanding what's your customer's need, how do you drive that conversation? What impact are you creating? What questions can you ask? When you're not prepared, it's like, I think you will resonate it very well. When you're not prepared for an operation, you know how the surgery is going to go through, right? So look at the preparation as a medical doctor would do or a surgeon would do before they go into the OT. If you're not prepared well, your stress is, of course, going to double up. So lack of preparation is one of the aspects I've seen. Two is not really anticipating. Again, it falls into the preparation aspect because you're not anticipating the objections and the changes which they are actually, which actually the client is responding. So you're not able to really articulate. Hence, there's a roadblock. Hence, the stress increases. And I think there's a lot of cultural aspect also in the organization, where your superiors, your bosses, or your leaders are constantly looking at numbers as part of their requirement, and hence it's like, go get the deal. I remember in my IBM days, we used to have this weekly cadence calls, right? And every Monday it was like, okay, when is this number coming in?
Right.
There is no need of explanation. You can talk about all the efforts you've done, but I always remember the statement, we were told that efforts don't matter, results matter. Now remember like how the stress would be, because you're not selling a product, you're selling a solution, you're selling something which can make a change. So hence the stress levels are so high in that profession. But I think culturally it has to change from organizations, how you're actually enabling your salespeople to be well prepared, giving them the tools and methodologies.
So I think to the point of preparation, I believe, and that is why we are talking here, is a lot of neuroscience also needs to be understood.
Yes.
For example, there are 3 fundamental brains which we all operate. And I have been telling this multiple times, but I think this is very, very important for all those people who are listening to the very first time. There is a basic brain stem, which is important for breathing. My heart is racing. Everything is happening from that brain stem. The moment I go above, there is something called the the emotional brain. And this emotional brain is very important because all the problems that I attend to, the love and the care, the fight, flight, fear, freeze, all that is happening in the limbic cortex or the emotional cortex. As I go a little up above, right here, there is the frontal cortex. And this frontal cortex or the prefrontal cortex is sort of the seat of humanness. What it does: allows me to differentiate, allow me to judge what is good, bad for me, allows me to think better, think far, think futuristic, make decisions. So I think this prefrontal cortex also allows me to regulate the emotions which are arising, which are sometimes irrational. So when it comes to buying a thing, it's a very, very interesting thing. Am I bringing my limbic or the emotional system, or am I bringing my prefrontal cortex to choose, to buy what am I going to take, And very, very interesting also, when we talk about the brain a little bit further, there are four fundamental, because we have a left brain and a right brain, there are four fundamental types which comes forward. One of the types on the left is more of a rational, everything has to be linearly thought of.
Yeah.
There has to be a structure. The price should be correct. The way the product is presented is important. The nitty-gritties, the very, very detail of it is very important. While on the right side, right brain, which is both emotional and right frontal, is more about the color, texture, more about how it, emotionally, how it attracts. So if a salesperson, and I want your opinion on that, is understanding these basic neuroscience fundamentals, do you think that is one of an important tool? Yeah. And yes, of course, we will be bringing an entire course. Yeah. So Leenna and me are going to share all these frameworks and tools, but let's hear from her in a very short description. How does it matter?
Absolutely right. You've actually touched upon a very important factor. It's not only about for salespeople, but it's also to the person you're talking to, whether it's a client, whether it's another person. It is so important to understand how we think, feel, and act, right? And so much in line with what you're talking about, the thinking, feeling, and the instinctive brain as we talk. And I would love to hear the medical terminologies. We say that it's a thinking, feeling, and an instinctive. I know it's a thinking is the prefrontal. And the
feeling is the emotional limbic. Yes.
And the instinctive is the brainstem, right? So we all are emotional people, and I often get asked this question: are we emotional or rational? Mm-hmm. Right? I'm sure. So we are all emotional people. We all make decisions based on our emotion. We always justify with our rational, logical thinking. So when we are such an emotional human being, you can imagine that when stress really falls on to our, when we start thinking about, when are our numbers coming? How am I going to meet my targets? What am I supposed to answer to my leaders when they're going to ask me? The stress level increases. Your emotional brain starts working. So, it's super stressful for someone to even take an action. So it's extremely important, as you rightly mentioned, to really understand how our brains function and stimulate it. And I'm sure there are techniques which I've seen you speaking about. There are multiple techniques to actually channelize it and really work for you rather than work against you. Mm-hmm. So yes, the answer is understanding how your brain thinks and acts is such an important factor to even connect with people. How do you create an impact otherwise? Because the stress you're going to transfer to the other person.
So in the olden times, it would be like the salesperson, the trust was paramount, and we still have those family doctors. I mean, I come from a medical field, so I relate to that pretty much well. The family doctor who's been there for literally, God alone knows, 70, 80 years because of that trust factor, right?
Yeah.
Sales, a lot is about the trust.
Absolutely.
So one thing is, yes, getting that emotional, I would say, trust. And the second thing is also understanding that the customer's emotions play a very important role when they are making a choice as well.
Absolutely. Because we always think inside out, not outside in. Mm-hmm. Because our emotional first kicks in when somebody, for example, when you're going to buy a car, if you're making a decision to buy a car, when I'm making a decision to buying a car, I am actually logically justifying that what's the resale value or what's the efficiency, what's the speed. But actually what seals the deal is, how do I feel about when I'm driving it? I mean, I can guarantee you, if somebody brings the same efficiency, the same look and feel of how the car is, I would still pick the other one because I feel connected to it. I feel nice driving it, or maybe it's about showing to your peers that I have this model or this brand or whatever that is. So your emotion always kicks in when you're actually making that final decision. So when we think inside out, why do we discuss outside in? When we actually talk to people, we always talk about logical things, but we talk about emotions later. But when we make a decision, that's the same thing for the other person as well, right? So when we make a decision emotionally, we need to also connect to the emotional factor of the other person and have that conversation, which really de-stresses the discussion. Or
absolutely.
Yeah.
And in that regards, for all the business people who are listening also, most of the times you do see people talking about the features and the benefits, but the meaning, what it applies, and the outcome.
Yeah.
What is it going to my life? What is it going to do to my life? The impact is missing often.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it's the way it is portrayed, not just the way it is shown, but also the way how you make that person understand.
Yeah.
I think both are of value.
Yeah, how do you connect? For example, if I'm selling a smartwatch, simple example, right? Like all of us want to have a smartwatch. When I'm selling a smartwatch, and if I say that the battery of the smartwatch is 24 hours, now it's a feature. And I immediately, my logical brain is comparing, because that's what the logical brain does. Comparing and being judgmental, say, okay, the other watches also has 24 hours. But what if I change the narrative? If I say that, you know what, the watch will not die for a very long time as you go for a hike. If you're going for a all-day hike, the watch will still stay,
beautiful,
intact. Or if you're going on a long drive, you don't have to worry about whether your watch is going to die because you have information. Or if you're a busy person. So benefits always connects to the impact. And that is what drives the person to make a decision. So a very smart salesperson will actually define the features, or we'll translate the features to benefits so that it can connect to either the gain or the loss.
Beautiful.
What is the cost of not taking an action, or the cost of inaction is what benefits can relate, because benefits for everyone is different.
True.
For you, a long drive, the watch needs to be, alive could be a very important factor. But for someone else, when they are, hiking for the whole day, they want the watch to be, ticking well, and they don't want to be bothered about. So for each of us, the benefit is different. So it's so important to understand what is the impact of actually buying that product is where you connect on the emotional level.
Absolutely.
So emotions make those decisions. The moment you talk about features, you're immediately giving
something comparable, something judgmental,
you're giving the mantle
something
to the other person to reject, saying
Absolutely.
that, okay,
Right.
this doesn't make sense. Why am I paying so much? There's a price conversation immediately that comes in.
Right. So I think the conversation again goes to price versus value. What is the
Absolutely.
value that
Yes.
you're giving to
Yeah.
a person, and then that can be priceless as well, depending
Absolutely.
on the value
Absolutely.
what is being derived,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
I mean, of course, pricing, there are these 3 slots often we see. There is
Yes.
a lot of science behind it as well. Why don't
Yes.
you talk about that?
So that we call the concept of anchoring. So again, that's one of the principles in Neurosales. We kind of talk about that when you're actually this happens mostly in the SaaS kind of business. Or now I'm seeing in a lot more organizations where they're creating tiered layered of pricing. Now the concept of anchoring is your brain always likes to anchor on whatever is better than the other. So if you have a zero basic feature, you have this basic subscription, which is $0, and the other one is $25, right? So you're actually looking at what am I gaining more? So, and you would have a $50 as a subscription. Now I'm anchoring the $0 to decide my $25, and my $50 might be a little more, but I want to stick to something which I'm getting better than the other. So the anchoring effect, again, your brain, I would love to hear from you on how does anchoring, you correlate with the neuroscience,
See,
how does the
essentially-
brain really work when somebody is really getting into that concept?
No, absolutely. The brain needs some basis, right? The
Yes.
brain needs some basis where comparison or what do I relate to? So, and that is the reason why most of the prices that you see put up would be 3. But there is another factor to it also, where there is something called the choice paralysis.
Yes.
So when the brain is faced with multiple choices, there was a big study which was done, and this was a brilliant study. What they did was 30 items were kept on the shelf in a supermarket, and the people were supposed to buy from that, and they were given an X dollars to go and buy during a particular period, and then there was 30 items right there. And then there was another set of the experiment where there were 6 items which were kept. In both the cases, you would wonder that, oh, obviously 30 items means more sales, right?
Yeah.
And then 6 items means less sale. Just the reverse happened, where the people had less choices, more buying happened.
Right.
And people had more choices, less buying happened. So what is happening in the brain is also we need to understand that when a lot of things are being presented, it's a lot of effort. In fact, every single thing for a brain to choose, right from what I'm wearing to what my shoes would be, entails a lot of decision.
Absolutely.
And that is the reason why I'm a great proponent of minimalists. So you will see all my lectures, everything, I just have literally 4 pairs of clothes which I keep on changing. That essentially means that I'm reducing my cognitive fatigue. I'm reducing my energy expended on to bringing or making that choice. Now, I wish, I don't know, it's a very different world now that we are living in, Leenna. We have a lot of internet coming in our lives, a lot of Amazons, a lot of noons.
Absolutely.
So a lot of things are happening online where the choices are absolutely endless, right?
Absolutely.
So how does it happen? What happens?
We call it the analysis paralysis for the customers, right? For anyone to make a choice, it's an analysis paralysis because am I making the right decision? Again, your emotion is kicking in there, There's too much for me to choose and the cognitive load is so much. So just imagine when I'm going and having a conversation with a client who's making a decision of probably having a big MRI machine in the hospital. Right? That's a very complex decision, right? You have multiple people making a decision and you got to influence multiple people internally. Now, if there are multiple such machines, already the complexity is with the number of people making that decision, right? Now you have an instrument which I'm trying to make a comparison, and then you have 5 other brands coming and talking about the MRI machine. Now it's like the best decision is to not to make a decision, So typically what happens in a flight or fright or freeze mode, you're like, the best decision is not to make a decision because this is too much for me to analyze. So where does a salesperson's role play here? This is where we say change makers or facilitators for change, right? You kind of de-stress or demystify and help them see the impact and instead of going through the features, the benefits of each of them, and help them make that choice, give them the power of choice by driving a conversation which can lead to the right choice which you feel is right for them.
Right.
So analysis paralysis is actually increasing a lot in today's time because I'm not able to make a decision. To whom do I ask? Which is the expert, even in medicine, right? When I have to go up, the second opinions, there are third opinions, the fourth opinions. Why? Because there's too much of choices being given. Again, to really understand how our brain really functions and what action should I take is such an important factor. So really knowing how our brain really makes decisions is fundamentally
a big thing, right?
Big thing. Fundamentally, that's what really helps us.
I am reminded at this point in time of a beautiful study which was done through functional MRI. So what happens is when you get into a gantry, you get your brain scanned, the certain areas of the brain would light up. And those areas would be lighted up depending on what your emotional state is, what are your rational state is, whatever your state be. And there were 2 drinks which people were given,
Pepsi
the
and
Pepsi and the Coca-Cola,
yeah.
right? So what happened was when it was agnostic or blinded by the tastes, people just had a standard lighting up in the area of the drinking which happened. But the moment people were told it's Coca-Cola, there was a lighting up in the emotional area, which means there was this brand loyalty or brand connection. Which was happening in the brain, which was absolutely visible. I also get reminded of a beautiful study which was done by a company, automotive company. So people wanted to buy cars. There were lots of cars which were kept. They had actually made jackets which they would wear, and then the people would make those choices of buying a certain car. They also gave glasses where the pupil size was sort of denoted. What actually the people were trying to make out is, when I am excited, when I love the product, I love the color, the texture, the feel of it, my pupils will be dilated. I will have sweating of a particular type.
Wow.
My heart rate would race. And from that, the scientists were super smart. What they did was they predicted how many people would buy. They were sitting outside in that area, and then their prediction was 98% accurate.
Wow.
Just simply by understanding what are the physiological changes which is
happens
happening.
to make the
And that
decision.
also reminds me that smell
Yeah.
has an absolutely wonderful impact. If you go to a mall, if you
Yeah.
go to a hospital, you go to a shopping complex, you will see certain citrus type of a smell
Yes.
which flows in. Very deep meaning to that, because your olfactory system or your smelling system is directly related to your limbic or the emotional system. Some people in the families, good old families, do the oud,
Yeah.
or also the incense
The
sticks in the
camphor.
family, the
Yeah.
camphors, the candles, right? What is the meaning of that? Because the moment you lit that up, your emotional system sort of down regulates.
Mm-hmm.
It is not now throwing those fear or that, it is sort of regulated towards more positive balance.
Yeah.
So there is a shift which is happening. So I think there are so many such nuances,
Yeah.
and that is the reason why we will bring out a beautiful course. You can watch the details below. The course will have beautiful 8 modules talking about all these factors which you as a salesperson, or for that matter as a buyer,
Yeah.
it really does not
to
matter.
anybody for that matter, because
Correct.
we are all selling in our world. You, me, all of us.
I'm
as-
selling an idea which is for
Absolutely.
healthy living, right?
Absolutely.
Each of us are salespeople in one or the other regards.
Right,
I'm not doing, although the meaning of the word doctor, I often ask, and people come back to me and say, oh, the meaning is to treat and to heal. And the real meaning of the word doctor is to dossier, which means to teach. So my job is teach the healthy lifestyle. My job is teaching somewhere where you don't fall sick.
Right.
So that's why
that's
we're
an
here on the
impact
journey.
You're creating again.
Absolutely.
I think the funny part was when in the Pepsi and the Coca-Cola, test what they did, people liked the taste of Pepsi, but when they were told it's Coca-Cola, suddenly the
Emotional centers lit up.
yeah, because of the brand connection. So look at how the emotional triggers, what has been their memory and how they are actually correlated. And exactly with the smell, sometimes it can trigger negative emotions
Yes.
as well, because it kind of connects back to old memories and how. Our emotional brain is our go-to. Hence, it's so important to really understand how somebody responds to an emotion, to a statement, to a conversation, and what is the impact it creates when that particular product or service or solution is actually being embedded in their system. How does it really impact that person personally and professionally? Because people don't buy the product or service or solution just because it's making a change in their business, but because it's making a change for them personally.
First.
Right? First, of
Yes.
course. Is it going to move my position from here? Am I going to be redundant if this particular technology comes in? Because that's the biggest fear people have, right? Am I going to be redundant because I have not stepped up to that? So if I understand that, then my conversation is such, in fact, helping them enable that particular, feature or benefits which they could actually take clue from and develop themselves from. So I guess it's such an important. This is very much, I would say, ignored or forgotten. And we are so tuned to just talking about what our product, service, solution is, and how can I actually create that. How can I let my client make a decision? And hence the emotional factor. And I love this. That is why I love this topic of neurosales. That the neuro part, the emotional part of your brain, how it makes that decision is such an important part for sales. Because your customer will sell for you.
Yes.
You don't have to really make that effort.
So you have been working in these wow companies, right? IBM and Intuits and all. So tell us more about any of the anecdotal things that are coming to your mind as stories, where you said, okay, this is how the framework has to be inside out and not really outside in.
Yeah, I always remember this very interesting, multiple stories, of course, because 30 years in sales,
Yes.
you can imagine that I can write about multiple volumes of books probably. But one very interesting story which happened in IBM was we were actually, we're supposed to be bidding for a project which had multiple networking components which is going for it. It's a huge project on ICT and complete digital transformation. And it so happened that the team at the other end, which is the client, was not very keen to talk to us. Why? Because they had a very bad experience with the earlier person who was dealing with them. And then they said, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to talk to this organization. You've really messed up the early project and blah, 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 all of these things. And now here it's not because they didn't like the person, but it kind of, the emotional part again, right? It kind of made them feel that the customer did not live up to the expectations of the internal stakeholders. Now, the emotional part played such an important role. So again, because we were exposed to certain frameworks and methodologies and much early on understood how the brain functions, I went up to the client and I said, I'm not here to sell you anything. I don't even want to discuss about the project. I really want to understand what went wrong, what was the impact it created for you personally and for the rest of the stakeholders. And when that statement came up, you could suddenly see that sense of trust shift in the conversation. And he said, are you sure you're going to have this conversation, then going to ask me a PO? I said, no, I'm not here. I can probably send you an email saying that I don't want this deal. I really want to know what happened, And that's when that whole trust connection started. And he said, you know what happened? And this whole story about 2 to 3 hours, he kept giving me information about what went wrong. And I said that, I know I can't change the past, but what I can do is we can sit together and work with what are your expectations and let's keep it transparent.
So it's again comes back to that original humanness,
trust,
what
emotion,
fundamentally what a person needs, right?
Absolutely, because people make decisions based on what's impacted them, right? What has shifted for them. And I always say that keep the person out of the equation. It's
Beautiful.
not because they don't like you. It's because the way you've not connected to what their expectations were.
And that is one of the factors where the stress can be annihilated, can be lessened, because the person is not objecting you, because this is very painful, right? If somebody says no to you, so taking those no's, taking that no's for those products that a person is selling, and then developing that resilience mindset.
Absolutely.
Because that mindset, I feel, is extremely important.
Yeah.
And there is also a very beautiful theory called loss aversion theory, which I am getting reminded of, that if something is scarce, if there is suddenly a stock which is declared saying, oh, these are the last 10 pieces, then people would just absolutely rush towards it and then sort of want to buy it.
Yeah.
Again, it's sort of a neural network, a mechanism where the brain does not want to feel left out.
Absolutely.
The FOMO, we all know this fear of missing out, right? There's also a lot of things they say. There's some FOMO and so many things are coming up.
There is a new term
What is that?
FOMO. It's called fear of messing up.
Oh, wow.
This is what is happening with organizations. The client is saying, like a no decision scenario, right? That I am scared of the messing up scenario than missing out. I'm okay to miss out, but I don't want the mess up, because the mess up clearance is far more stressful than missing out. So hence there is a study which says that 50% of the decisions are no decisions, not to the competitor. The decisions have not gone to the competitor, nor it has come to you, but it is because they've decided not to go ahead because they're not very clear what is the impact of taking that decision. Because when it comes to complex scenarios, buying a car, buying a home itself, when you say it's a simple thing, but itself is a complex. Imagine when you're talking about making decisions of digital transformation, creating a cultural shift. Imagine different people's emotions and different people's expectations. So it's better not to go with it and stay with what we have. And, so that's one of the aspects. But I think I love that statement, the loss aversion theory you spoke about. It's very, very well articulated in the book called Think Fast and Slow.
Daniel Kahneman.
Yes, brilliantly. In that, one of the stories which stuck to me is like how people associate to loss more than gain. So they call about 10 to 15 people. They do a test and they say that, hey, you know what? I'm going to give you $50. You don't have to do anything. You can take this $50 and go away. But there's another option. I flip the coin and you get $100 if you get heads. But you get nothing if you get tails. So which is the one you want to choose? What do you think they would have chosen?
I think the one where it is $50. Just take those $50
Absolutely.
and,
But can you imagine that they never had the $50 before?
Yes.
Yes. So the brain has already calculated that I don't want to lose what I got. But I'm not even thinking that I'm going to get
I might get $100.
Yeah, I might get $100. It's a potential gain
it's
of
a 50% chance of gaining
so
that.
losing that 50 was more, I want to latch on to it. So people associate to loss because this I'm already secured than gain.
Right.
So that's why we say that in conversations with your client, help them see the impact of not taking an action. You know, how does it really impact them? And hence allow them to move from the paralysis zone to a learning zone.
Beautiful.
And this is where salespeople can really make a lot of difference. That, you know, the best choices cannot be made in the comfort zone, right? If you have to make the best choices, you have to make different choices. Different choices don't happen in a comfort zone. You really have to move out of that. So when you move out of the comfort zone, you take the client to a learning zone, which means you're really educating and giving insights about, again, the impact of taking or not taking an action, really connecting to what could the emotional trigger be for them. And that really, we have seen that most of the clients whom we speak to as buyers, we speak to, they say, you know, I want to talk to salespeople who can help me understand what is the impact of taking an action or not. Educate me.
And you're
give
talking
me
also,
insights.
you're talking of things such as SaaS, you know, you're
Yeah,
talking of simple things such as
absolutely.
software. And,
Yeah.
and we're not even talking of other things which
Yeah.
may be more important, or, I mean, everything is important, but very dry. Let's put
Yeah.
it something
Yeah.
which you are selling, which really has
Yeah.
no direct emotional implications. So
Yeah.
it's really important to understand these
Absolutely.
nitty-gritties of thinking, you know.
Yeah. And you know, many of them would say that, oh, it's a $10 product, $20. It's not about the price, right? It's about the impact it's creating.
Right.
And what kind of impact is it creating? You know, the moment I incorporate it into my system, it's impacting multiple people.
Absolutely.
Right? And multiple people, multiple emotions, multiple understanding of the benefits.
Absolutely.
Multiple triggers where for some it's a loss, for some it's a gain. So you can imagine the complexity, right? So
Absolutely.
it's so important to connect at individual level for each of them to really, you know, help your clients take that decision. So
That reminds me of the off studio talk that we were having on the motivation, right? There's particular motivation which is very important when it comes to buying decisions.
Yeah.
And there is a beautiful effect called the Zurich effect,
Yeah.
which you were talking about. Why don't
Yeah.
you tell us more about it?
It's a social psychological framework, the Zurich effect, which talks about three triggers which humans actually connect to, which is autonomy. And autonomy is about, the power of making a choice. Give me the power to make a choice. Don't tell me what to do. Direct me how to do it.
Beautiful.
Right? So give me options, which are the best options. I mean, so what could salespeople ideally do is to give them the best options and direct them to the right option they could pick up. That's autonomy, right? We all don't want to be told as human, let's accept it. However open-minded, however positive, however we think that I'm humble.
Even possibly as children, I don't think so. We
Absolutely.
like being told, oh,
Yeah,
do this
no one
or
like
do
to
that.
be told. In fact, children, they become more resistant. I think it all stems, we can learn from children quite
the
a bit.
childhood,
the
right?
moment you tell them what is to be done, they do the opposite, right?
It's
So
like
that's
me
a
telling
risk.
you right now, don't think of a pink snake.
Yeah.
Boom.
There it is.
There it is, you know. So it's all psychological
Yeah,
frameworks
yeah.
which operate at the back end, you know.
Absolutely. So autonomy is to give them the power of making the choice, and that is something as salespeople you can beautifully do. Second is, and I just want to delve upon that, is when you say giving them the power of making the choice, you yourself should be so
Clear.
and know your services, what it can do for the client. Otherwise, you're giving them the wrong choices, right? Again,
Beautiful.
it's a wrong impact. So that's another critical aspect.
So that leads me to a question: are these all sales training? And when they go through these, you know, the product and the features, so most of the sales training that I have been a part of, or I have seen it very dry.
Yeah.
So do you think that needs a shift, a paradigm shift
Definitely.
into, as you were completely talking about, inside out shift,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I think the answer is yes. So training as a concept is a one-time thing. It's like a sprint running, right? But I think the shift should be to enable. How do you enable your salespeople to consistently adapt to certain best-in-class methodologies and frameworks so that they can apply it and then you see results? So it has to be a consistent approach. It's like going to the gym, right?
Right, absolutely.
It's about, I can't expect a transformation from my body in one day. I need to consistently go there, and then I know how my muscles are building up. So that consistency is such an important thing. And the shift from training on product and technology versus how do I engage with my customers
Beautiful.
is the most important shift to be, I haven't seen many organizations. I think now there's a shift in that. I've not seen many organizations when there's an onboarding that they have a sales workshop or a sales program. They want the person to actually work in there 6 months, 7 months, and then now they bring in a sales program saying that, okay, teach them, train them on objection handling or train them about customer engagement. So I think that shift is such a fundamental thing to see effectiveness. Another thing is, as salespeople, you also have the responsibility to keep enabling yourself, keep learning and understanding and educating yourself, because you can't be spoon-fed all the time. So there's so much information out there.
I think before I spoke to you, I just thought that, sales, one time you just learn it and that's it. But I think, as you rightly mentioned, it's an evolving and a learning process. And then very interesting, there are different brains that we have to engage with, right?
Yeah.
There's no one brain and one size fits all. So how do you modulate those responses? I think even reading the faces, even reading the body language, even feeling the way you mirror a particular. So if we talk about this NLPs or neuro-linguistic programs, the way your eyes is going, what is the person thinking, from the features, from those facial recognition, you can figure out a lot of things. I mean, I do that in my clinic every day, So there are two kinds of patients who come to me, and I very clearly, from the mannerisms, understand that this is more of a left brain thinking person, where I would be very, very particular in giving my directions. So for example, a 500 ml of milk along with 500 milligrams of very, very specific, along with a written prescription, while I may not do that with somebody who is more of a right-tuned person. Although, there's too much of a left and right, is a lot of pop, but there are nuances to it.
Yeah,
once we understand these nuances, you can cater your solution, which is mirroring or matching to that particular brain.
Yeah. And they say that your body language, the way you look, act, the way you sit, and when you're sitting across, body language is 55% of the communication.
Yes,
and that's
absolutely.
a huge number.
That's a huge
right?
number, yeah.
So it's major part. So if you can really understand that and really modulate your conversation. Coming back to the Zurich effect, I think security and arousal, these are the two other important things. We spoke about autonomy.
Right.
Now it's about security. Everybody likes to understand what is that product or service or solution, anything I'm buying, what is the stability of that product? Even if I'm buying a 100 dirham product, I want to see durability be asked, right? What is the warranty? What will happen, if it breaks down? If it's I remember one of my friends, she bought a fan which was 25 dirhams online, and she said, do they have a warranty? And I'm like, wow, this is amazing.
That's how the brain thinks, right?
The security is one of the most important factors. And also, people want to be exposed to new things, innovative things, right? So also for multiple reasons. People like to probably adapt to new things because they want to be seen as a leader, or they want to be adapting innovative things so that the FOMO is not there, fear of missing out is not there. So I think the Zurich effect, I love thanks for bringing that up, Dr. Sweta, because that's a very important, I would say, area which salespeople can actually delve into and develop themselves as, and it could be a part of sales enablement. That model of Zurich effect can be a part of sales enablement. That how do you give your clients the power of choice? How do you really help them see the stability in what you're actually... Stability also does not mean as a product.
Yes.
It's about what's your after-sales service.
Absolutely.
How do people behave with them? That is also part of stability and security, right? And how are you
I don't want to be just left high and dry or left alone after something is sold to me, right?
Absolutely.
Because finally all my emotions post that also needs to be handled.
Big impact, which is where the FOMO comes in play, right?
Correct.
So decision paralysis comes in there. And also, how do you educate your clients with new innovative, new things, being really putting them into a learning zone. So I think that's such an important factor to be part of enablement. And this can't be a training, but enablement where you're really applying those aspects of Zurich effect into your enablement journey. I think that's important.
Amazing. I think a couple of more questions before we close this. This is such an interesting discussion, and we really have to keep carrying this conversation on. Do not miss the course that we are going to bring out post this. My question pertaining to this is a little bit different because there is this, internet era is a very, very different era. And we used to have the old time sales, people actually coming to your doors. I still remember as I was a kid. And in the era of internet, attention, I think that is the new currency. Forget about all the data, the oil business and all. I think really key is attention.
Yeah.
And as the new data is coming up, the attention is really getting slower and slower. So if I want to bring in a product, I want to bring in a service, I want to get something to people out there, attention is going to be my key phenomenon.
Absolutely,
So how do you deal with that?
Yeah. So I would say one of the key things to look into is really have a layered way of communication. Like you said, it was, I think, 12 seconds, the attention span. Now
That's
it's
right,
8
8
seconds.
seconds, yeah.
Now I think it's even 1 second. I'm not too sure. People say that within 4 seconds, please have your video put up there, just
Yeah.
a snap. So, of course, the attention span is going down. We can't avoid that. But what do we do about it? So one of the techniques to use is layered way of communication. Like I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
I'm in the sales effectiveness and enablement business, right? So when a client typically comes back to me, and this is a statement I hear from a lot of sales leaders that, you know what, my forecast is not accurate. People just forecast, either they do part of it or they don't do any of it. So I'm always left in a roller coaster ride, So rather than telling them a whole lot of things, my question would be like anchoring, layered communication, right? What if I solve one of your issues in forecasting and that could lead to a 5% increase or betterment in your focus? How does it feel for you? And now you're catching the attention. Again, the anchoring effect.
Right.
And then you substantiate by saying that, we have done that with many organizations by introducing opportunity qualification, because then your forecast is better because you're qualifying your opportunities better. That's a second layer of communication. So layered communication is such an important factor in today's era because the attention span is very, very, very little. So I guess that's one technique which people can use for improving their attention span.
Absolutely. So beautifully said. And can you tell us one skill or one sort of that secret brain sauce which people can bring in to become super sales, super salespeople or something?
Yeah, I think
yes, we are going to bring out the entire course and a lot of frameworks will be there, part of it. Let's talk about one thing, and then I'm going to pose one question which is very interesting. I read it from a study, and we will put it up for the audience listening to us.
Okay. I think one skill always and will ever be there is empathy.
Beautiful.
Because we said emotional brain always triggers decisions. And so empathy really allows you to connect with people. That's like a non-negotiable, right? The second is, how do you build credibility?
Beautiful.
Building trust. So again, it's like interconnected. When you have empathy, you're actually developing trust. But one very important thing I would also add, another part of it is, really upskill yourself, be a lifelong learner. It's never enough.
Absolutely.
Because the things are changing so fast that if you're not continuously keeping yourself open to learning, the old ways are not going to work for you, right? So that's one of the, so I would say 3 secret sauces rather than one.
Yeah,
You asked for one, I gave you 3.
Wonderful. So empathy, which I love,
Empathy,
absolutely. The
building
credibility or the trust.
and
Learning.
Develop
Yes.
your skills and don't, this is an often heard statement, right? Oh, AI is going to take off our jobs. No. AI is not going to take your job. People who are going to use AI better are going to take your jobs.
Yes.
It is so so relevant in the sales world as well. There's so much of automation happening.
Right.
I get a lot of calls from AI agents, typically talking if I don't carefully listen, I would think that it is somebody as a human. So it's
Right.
only going to get better, right? So AI is not going to take your job. People are going to use AI really well, and for their business is going to take. So keep yourself open and keep learning and keep, looking for information which can enable yourself. I think these 3 are critical for you to be successful.
And I'm going to add one, because since I'm a neuroscientist and also a great proponent that, learning to handle stress.
Yeah.
I think that stress will be there, and stress is there. And there's nothing called as distress, provided you understand that stress also helps. So there's something called the eustress, right? I want to do something. I want all my energy up. I want all my muscles to work for it. So I need to be optimally aroused or stressed to a level, and then I don't need to get into the distress. So have breathing well, breathing properly, spending at least 5 minutes. And I have been talking about a thing called movers. So M for meditation, O for oxygenation, V for visualization, very clearly knowing what you want out of your life, E for exercise, moving, R for reading something affirmative or learning, as Leenna mentioned, S for scribing everything which is negative. So very, very important. All these keeps us into the everyday groove of it and also makes us do our jobs better. My last question, which I promised to the audience, was, why do we buy iPhones? So iPhone is such a, such a thing which people love to have. I mean, I don't own one, but you have an iPhone.
Yeah, I do.
Why did you buy that?
It again goes back to the emotional. Look at how Apple actually, presents their product. Not all of their versions are so different from the other, right? So it kind of creates a sense of wanting to be there, that experience it gives you. I think that is one of the reasons I would feel. Many have got different reasons.
Yeah, so
but the emotional part, yeah.
Some people would say, oh, the technology is fantastic. I mean, look at Huawei phones. It's as good, right? Look at Samsung, the new versions of Samsung.
They're sleek, they look nice as
Absolutely.
well. But the way Apple presents, I mean, people are queuing up like early morning till night to get that one, new model. Why would you? And literally selling everything to buy an iPhone, right?
So I was going through this study, and it's very, very interesting. So how the neuroscience sort of helps also in building the product.
Absolutely.
In fact, it is said that the touch, when you touch the iPhone, the 0 to 4 second touch, that feeling what it gives is actually registered like a human touch.
Wow.
So I mean, I was completely blown up by this thing when I read that you don't want to let go of that touch. So that touch is sort of an anchoring effect. And of course, yes, of course, all the network effect and, all my things are being done and a lot of people are using it.
That's logical. It's logical thinking, right?
So you can feel that how each of the concepts of neuroscience is so beautifully actually a part of our daily life and daily living,
Yeah.
So we will keep continuing this conversation, although this will be available as the course format, where I will be taking 4 fundamental modules and Leenna will be taking another 4 fundamental modules, which is more delivered towards the framework of it. And I will be keeping on talking more about understanding the brain, understanding the emotional aspects of it. And very, very important, it is going to be extremely practical, because I think we live in an era where we have to be very mindful of the people's time. But this is one course which I would say, because we have really done a lot of efforts into it and we would like you to explore it. Please look at the captions below. Thank you very much for being here today, Leenna.
Thank you so much,
It's
Dr.
always good to learn. I don't come from a sales background. I don't come from a background which is into marketing. I'm purely into medicine. But again, I think sales is a part of everyday life.
Absolutely.
We are all buying some things. We're all selling some things. Even a teacher is selling an idea to a student. So there's nothing to shy about when we talk about sales. So thank you very much, all of you as well, for listening to this podcast. And we keep continuing the journey with the Limitless Brain Lab. Signing off, Dr. Sweta Adatia.